Thanks so much for appearing today and by phone to save you all the fuss and bother and carbon of that travel. And thank you, first of all, particularly for your responses to my questions on notice around your funding and your research activities. I want to take you, first of all, to one of those answers. I've got Quan S1 125 here with me, which was about, or which you answered and discussed the National Sea Simulator.
So what was that number again, Sam?
Yeah, it was S1 or SI maybe, dash 125.
Thank you.
So, gents, you noted in that response that your budget has been cut by 7.8 million over the forwards and that you therefore had to scale back parts of your research, particularly the strategic research. So I want to go first to that National Sea Simulator. Can you just explain in general terms what that program actually does?
Senator, it's John Gunn replying here. Well, a National Sea Simulator is in fact a piece of infrastructure rather than a project in itself. It is, we claim, the most sophisticated experimental facility available to do tropical marine science anywhere in the world. And it allows us to do a very broad range of experimental studies, ranging from climate change through to ecotoxicology, looking at crown of thorns larval survival, etc. So in talking about the impact of budget reductions, really what we're talking about is the ability to use that facility to conduct science projects rather than in any way talking about the base running of that facility. We actually have funds in our appropriation budget to keep the water flowing and the control systems working.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Mead. So can you talk about the work on dredging and dumping that simulator the information that the simulator can reveal to us about the effects of dredging and dumping?
So this is John Gunn again. What I can outline is the work that's really in its first stages that we are doing in the Sea Simulator. This is research funded from the West Australian Marine Science Institution in Western Australia, and its objective is to look at the tolerance of different tropical organisms such as sponges, corals, etc., to different types of dredge spoil or dredge impacts. Mm-hmm. So in their early stages, what we've been able to do is establish an experimental setup that allows us to simulate different types of dredge operations, and then using some of the brood stock of corals and sponges in our collections, we're able to then put those organisms through a range of different types of experimental conditions. Those results are yet to be completed, but we're hoping to have something published within the next 12 to 18 months.
Okay, so has the funding cut limited your ability to, I'll be more specific, you mentioned that the impact of the funding cuts was not that you couldn't run the simulator anymore because you're able to keep it ticking over, but was more the projects that you could apply it to. Can you tell me which particular projects or what work has been either delayed or reduced or dropped because of that $7.8 million funding reduction over the forwards?
Senator, it's John Gunn again. So I have put some of that on record previously at Senate estimates. Mm-hmm. What I probably would be worth outlining is the dredging experiment I described a minute ago is going ahead because we can use essentially the existing or the budget that we have for the Sea Simulator and supplement that with the money that's being provided by the West Australian Marine Science Institution. What we are more limited in is allowing our researchers, all good research organisations have many more ideas from their research scientists than we can do. But the Sea Simulator, each year we call for proposals from our own scientists to conduct some, what I'd call early stage research that's not quite ready to provide advice into government or into industry. We invite them to put proposals up, and in effect, we cannot fund as many of those projects as we would if we hadn't had a cut.
Sure. So if you can perhaps take on notice for me, just to list those projects that you've been unable to fund that, you know, perhaps you would have deemed worthy enough to fund had the means been there. But I want to come back to your dredge research on the corals, which you say will be hopefully completed within 12 to 18 months. Bless you, Chair. Was that work intending to be fed into any particular government process?
So, again, interestingly, the West Australian Marine Science Institution has been able to fund this quite applied research on the impacts of dredging as a result of the West Australian EPA's decisions to direct some of their offsets funding to do research that will allow them to better estimate the impacts of dredging which they get in their approvals processes. So we hope, we expect that the results will very directly help them provide better guidelines and make better decisions about dredge approvals in Western Australia. And one of the reasons that we're very excited about this is that a lot of the work we're doing for a West Australian project we believe will be directly transferable across to the Great Barrier Reef or to Port of Darwin or wherever.
Okay, thank you. I was going to ask whether that work was transferable, so I'm pleased to hear that it is for the reef. So clearly that's an application for a state process, which is good. Were there any federal processes that you were intending on feeding that dredging research into, or maybe the reef plan or the dredge synthesis panel or any other processes which that's required to be fed into or could be fed into?
Yes, Senator, this is John Gunn. So you've named a couple of instances where our early results, pre-publication, we had two senior people, one from AIMS and one from the West Australian Office of the EPA, as a member of the Dredge Synthesis Independent Science Panel, feeding in their understanding and their wisdom into that synthesis report. Okay.
Well, let's move to that synthesis report, and I'm pleased to hear that you're having some input into it, but unfortunately the public hasn't been able to see that yet. I'm told by other departments that it is on the way, but remarkably they seem to imply that it had spent 7 weeks being formatted, which did seem like an inordinately long time just to do formatting for a document. Do you know when that final report was actually signed off? This is a dredge synthesis panel we're talking about? Yes. So perhaps it would be instructive. I have read Dr. Reichelt's transcripts from questions from you earlier in the week. So perhaps he didn't have the details to hand, so perhaps I'll just run you through the process. Thank you. The panel met in May 2014. 19 experts ranging from consultants to industry through to very, very specialist scientists at universities and at publicly funded research agencies, met to discuss a range of questions outlined in a terms of reference agreed between Kabrumpa and AIMS. So that they met first in May. They conducted a set of agreed analyses and reviews over the following 3 months. The report was then drafted and redrafted 3 times, I believe. You can probably appreciate that when you get 19 people from very diverse backgrounds and probably quite different priors, that getting an agreed final draft was quite a challenge for the 2 lead authors. But that brief drafting was completed in October. Passed through the panel for their final clearance, which came, I believe, in late October, early November. I was given a copy to clear in late November and did so in, I think it was early December.
I really don't know what the process was, the parallel process in the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority. But from my understanding, they have been responsible for the, if you like, the page setting and printing, and the advice I have from Dr. Reichelt is that publication is imminent.
Thank you. So the delay is not with the department as such, but it's with Gabrumpa just at the minute to finish off that formatting, or whatever it is they're doing.
That's my understanding, Senator.
Okay. I did ask Dr. Reichelt this, and you'll see that from your transcript, whether anyone in the department had told him to go slow on the completion of that report. I'll now ask you the same thing.
Nobody has asked me to go slow on anything, no.
Okay, thank you. Now, is it your understanding that that Dredge synthesis panel report is likewise, as we asked before, in a different context, going to feed into any regulatory changes or any regulatory process that's underway?
Senator, it's John Gunn again. My understanding is that synthesis report was commissioned as a result of significant uncertainties about the state of science. We've put a lot of time into it. Very much hope it's going to be a useful document, but any future uptake in terms of policy or regulation is really up to the department and the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority, not AIM.
Sure. Okay. Well, look, given, as you say, that there were significant uncertainties about the state of the science on the environmental effects of dredging, and that we still haven't...
That's your assertion, Senator Ward.
Well, no, that's what he said. I wrote that down. Significant uncertainties about the state of the science, quote unquote.
Yeah, no, you can keep
I
going.
don't seek to verbal him, but I'm pretty sure that's what he said. So,
Why don't you check with him?
well, Mr. Gunn, can I give you the chance? I jotted down before you said that there were significant uncertainties about the state of the science, and then you went on to continue
So
your sentence.
the panel was convened to bring to... Sorry, this is John Gunn again. The panel was convened to review the existing knowledge, to synthesise that where possible, and to outline the uncertainties that still exist in our knowledge of the impacts of dredging on the Great Barrier Reef.
Okay, thank you, and I'll rely on the earlier part of the transcript as well, where you
Slightly
said
different
significant
interpretation, I
uncertainties.
think so.
Mr. Gunn, there seems to be some misunderstanding about the level of uncertainty of the science. In your initial description, you said it was a significant uncertainty about the state of the science. I then gave you a chance to clarify that, and you've downgraded that to just an uncertainty. I'll just give you one final chance as to what level of uncertainty
The Minister's
you'd like to say.
representative is here, the Secretary of the Department is here. We're all interested to know.
No, don't feel intimidated, Mr. Gunn.
Well,
just as you know, say what it is your scientific expertise.
Well, it is evidence.
Don't be intimidated by the chair, Mr. Gunn. You're
I'm
free
not
to
looking
answer
to
the question in
intimidate
any
you.
way you like.
You're on a party line. We're all listening.
Chair, I'm not quite sure who's talking at any one time, I'm afraid. It's the
That's the
downside of being a
problem.
teleconference.
That's the problem. Senator Waters, continue.
Thanks, Chair. Mr. Gunn, it's Senator Waters here, the only female voice you'll hear, just for future reference at this stage.
Well, the Secretary's here. She's a female.
Sure,
and
but
she
she's
has
not
the
speaking,
right,
Chair.
But she does have the right to respond. She does have the right to respond.
The Secretary who's sitting here...
The Secretary has the
Secretary
right
of the
to
Department.
respond.
My apologies, thank you.
And
I would
she
encourage
does
you to speak up at any time.
have authority over the
Secretary.
people that you are talking to.
Actually, I think they're an independent statutory body, Chair. And I think we might have gone over the status of them earlier in the week in a different committee. So just because there appears to be some attempt at
Just move on,
confusion of
Senator
your
Waters.
words, Mr. Gunn, just one final chance for you to say what level of uncertainty you believe existed about the science around dredging and its impact on reefs prior to the commissioning of the Dredge synthesis panel.
So, Senator Waters, this is John Gunn, and I understand why you're teasing out the word significant. I can guarantee you that in anything to do with complex interactions of an ecosystem, there will be everything from plain uncertainty to very significant uncertainty. My use of the word significant uncertainty I won't withdraw, but in terms of its relation to policy and regulatory matters, I believe that you really do need to ask the Great Barrier Reef and Marine Park Authority in the department.
Okay, thanks very much. I'm really pleased that you clarified that.
So why would we ask them?
'Cause the report's
Sean,
now with
it's
them.
the chair here. Why would we ask them? Why have you referred us to them? Because they are the ultimate authority, is that right?
This is a joint panel.
That's correct. They're the ones that use our science. Sorry, this is John Gunn again. That's correct. They are, in fact, the receivers of our information about certainties and uncertainties. And in any regulation, in my experience over 30 years, it's very much a decision that takes in the uncertainties of science, the certainties of other factors and the uncertainties of other factors that politicians, departments and regulators are charged to weigh up.
Chair, can I just ask Mr Gunn, has this been commissioned by the Western Australians, or who exactly has it been commissioned by?
Minister Hunt is my understanding, but I'll bow to Mr Gunn's superior knowledge.
Mr Gunn, it's the chair here. The Senator Ronaldson, Minister Ronaldson representing the Minister, I'll just get you to repeat that.
I just wanted some clarification. There's anything great, big deal about it. I just wanted to know who actually has commissioned this research. Is this is it Minister Hunt, or is it the Western Australians, or who's actually commissioned it?
Senator, it's John Gunn here. This report, or the synthesis report, the activities of the panel were jointly commissioned by the Australian Institute of Marine Science and the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority.
Right, thank you.
Senator Waters.
Mr Gunn, can I just refresh my own memory through using yours? Was that an initiative of Gabrumpa, or were they asked to by Minister Hunt? I genuinely can't recall, so hopefully you can.
Senator, it's John Gunn again. I do not know whether Minister Hunt commissioned Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority. I suggest you ask their director.
Thank you. Look, I'm sure it's on the record and we can all look that up easily enough.
Why don't we get them here?
We've had them here, Senator, on Monday, and I asked about this very report.
Didn't get the right answers, or?
Well, I've had different answers, so it's
Well,
been
let's
quite
move
helpful.
on.
Thank you.
Let's move on.
Just coming back to Mr Gunn, coming back to the National Sea Simulator, and these are my final few questions. I'm interested in the kind of research that you were describing before that the simulator enables you to undertake. Is that the kind of research that industry or companies proposing new coal ports, for example, could conduct themselves? It sounds pretty unique to me, but I'm interested in whether companies would have the capacity to do that work themselves.
Senator, this is John Gunn again. We have a quite clear governance mechanism around use of the sea simulator. As the CEO of AIMS, I'm responsible for governing the use of it. We have not in any way made it available and don't plan to for commissioned research by industry. Mm-hmm. If, however, a research partner through an industry funding basis would be able to provide a very good proposal, then we would consider it on its merits in terms of its likely benefits to the public good.
Sure. Okay. I guess I was coming at that question from a slightly different angle. I'm interested in whether industry would have the capability to do that sort of research themselves, or whether the National Sea Simulator is unique in the information that it can provide.
It's John Gunn again, Senator. My belief is that there is no other facility of its type in Australia, and we've certainly been well aware of what's going on around the world. There's nothing as sophisticated as this any in the world, so I think it provides an unparalleled capacity. That's not to say that industry can't use other aquariums that are available to them in other parts of the world.
Okay. Are you aware of whether any of the operators that are proposing to build or expand coal ports in the Great Barrier Reef have been undertaking those aquarium studies, either in Australia or overseas. I'm not, but I stand to be corrected.
Senator, it's John Gunnigan. No, I'm not aware of any such studies, but I don't regularly review what ports and large companies are doing.
Sure. I guess the reason I ask is that the Department of Environment often approves projects on the proviso that companies go off and do further studies. And you've told us that you think that the information that can be gained from this particular facility is unparalleled, and you're not aware of companies doing that study, but I'll take that up with the department. Just one final question. You mentioned in your question on notice response, the same one I referred to before, S1 125, that you had, quote, terminated research on fish physiology and behaviour from human impacts. Is there anything else that's been totally terminated thanks to that $7.8 million funding cut over the forwards?
So, Senator, I'm just going to quickly look at our response.
Sorry.
Beg your pardon?
You're going to ask. You've made the allegation about what has been cut because of what. How about you put the question rather than just putting a fait accompli? You suggested that something was cut because there had been a funding cut. Why don't you
ask
him? Well,
their
that's exactly what
response
you
to
did.
the question on notice where they say that they have cut a program based on funding cuts. I'm asking if there's any other programs that have been cut.
Oh, is that what that answer said?
Yes.
Okay.
That's why I'm asking whether there's anything else.
Okay. Well, Senator, it's a bit hard in this context to be having one conversation here, one with you, and not having this information in front of me, which we'd normally have if they were here. But fair enough.
Would you like a copy of the question on notice?
Yeah, that'd be good, wouldn't it? Yeah, please.
Right. Secretary? Sorry, I assumed you had those things to hand.
Shall I proceed, Chair?
Yes, please do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, Senator, I listed the specific project that we have decided not to continue at AIM. The answer I gave you earlier about specific projects that we effectively have not discontinued but not have been able to fund stands as per my earlier evidence.
Okay, so the only one that's been terminated as such was that research on fish physiology and behaviour from human impacts.
Yes.
Okay, thanks very much. Thanks, gents. That's all I have.
Thanks very much,
Thank you,
Senator
Chair.
Waters.
Thank you, Minister.
And thank you to the committee
Charming
for
exchange.